G'day, I'm Todd for G66. Welcome to another Tuesday Tone Tip. Today we're on the FM3, and I want to share a few little essential tricks that I find incredibly useful when I'm building presets. And I find that a lot of the time I'm helping build presets for other people or helping dial in their units. We rely on these tricks a lot. So we're going to get started by hearing the core amp tone I've got at the moment. I've got the Cameron CCV2A amp model dialed up. All I've done is turn down the input drive and turn up the overall level a little bit. I'm using it with one of my own cabinet IRs available for free on Exchange. You can see the low cut and the high cut values right there. And this is tip number one. I'm using the gate in between the amp and the cab, and I have set the sidechain source as input 1. So rather than use the input gate here, you can see I've got this disabled, and rather than place a gate block first in line, what we're doing is putting the gate after the amp, because the amp is going to be generating and distorting and amplifying any external noise that's coming into it. We are then saying to the gate, hey, just listen to the raw sound of my DI guitar rather than everything coming from the amp block. You might be familiar with the idea of like keying a compressor or another effect type when you're mixing. What we're doing here is we are keying the gate using our raw guitar DI, and it works really, really well. You get a super tight gate, but you don't lose any of the beautiful things about your normal guitar sound, like the touch sensitivity. Notes still bloom and sustain as they should, and it's really fantastic. Check it out. I'll turn it off and then I'll turn it on. You can already hear some hit. Versus almost perfectly quiet. I would just need to adjust the threshold a little bit. Let's try it. Very, very good. Again, I would probably go a little bit harder with the threshold control. Perfectly quiet, which is exactly what I want. So there is one really cool way to use the gate, sidechaining it to input 1 and placing it after the amp block. The next trick relates to getting a boost on your signal, and instead of using a drive block, we're going to use a filter block just to give us a flat boost. This is a great way to give yourself more gain and sustain if you're using it before an amp, or a great way to get a level boost if you're using it after the amp, while really minimizing how much extra CPU you're using. So in this case, let's just clean the amp up a little bit. So I'll turn the gain down a bit. Alrighty, that's still going to be a lot of gain to some people. That's a moderate amount of gain. For me, what I'm going to do though is right before the amp, we're going to select a filter block. We can do one of two things. We can just use the level control to give us a flat gain boost. Let's have a listen to it off and then on. So in that case, I'm boosting an already dirty amp. It's just giving me more sustain and more saturation, which is personally what I want when I'm playing a guitar solo. Alternatively, if we were going after the amp block and we wanted a level boost, I would encourage people maybe start around 3 dB, even 2 dB if you're being conservative, and then play around with this particular value. If you wanted a grab and go solo boost, you could assign the filter block level to the perform page. So this is just going to increase the overall volume of my patch. When I placed it before the amp, it was increasing sustain and gain just like a boost pedal. In this case, we're just bringing the overall volume of your guitar up. Perfect if you want to make your guitar solos louder. And as we all know, loud is more good. So using a filter block for a flat boost is awesome in that case. One thing I like to do, say for example, if I was pre-boosting the amp, would be to not only bump up the level, let's maybe go for 10 dB, but to say go to about, well, let's say 1000 hertz, where it's set at the moment, use a peaking type EQ, which is down here, and just absolutely slam up the mid-range right there. So this is going to give you that same effect you might get out of, say, a tube screamer with the drive on 0 and level on 10, with the added advantage that you can fine-tune this mid-range frequency to wherever you want it. So let's have a listen to this effect. Really, really nice. It's adding this really intense mid-range boost now, which is when you're boosting in front of an amp, basically what you want. So a filter block is a great way to get that without using too much CPU. Let's go in a totally different direction now. Let's talk about funky pitch effects. And rather than use a pitch block to get an octave down effect on your guitar, you can use the ring modulator with tracking set to on to get a really cool old school kind of glitchy octave effect. I've been using this a lot in my presets recently and I've been loving it. So let's go to the ring modulator. We're just going to put pitch tracking on and we're going to set the frequency multiplier to 0.5 and ta-da, we have an awesome sounding octave down. So it's not pristine and clear and tight like the pitch block. That's totally the point. Sometimes you want that, say, electro harmonics inspired glitchy pitch effect in there, and the ring mod is a great way to do this. Alternatively, you could set the frequency multiplier to somewhere around 2. You could even offset it so it's slightly out of tune. Like say if we do 2.01 or something like that. There we go. It's gonna be an octave up, but just slightly off, like a really bad pitch pedal. I love that. It's full of character. If you're looking for polyphonic pitch tracking, use the pitch block virtual capo and that will do it very, very nicely. The ring mod is kind of the opposite. It's funky, it's weird. I love it. So there's the ring mod. Let's talk about another classic effect that came out in the 70s that is very desirable with the sort of sound I've got set up at the moment. I'm talking about the flanger block, and in particular I want to talk about that kind of Van Halen Unchained flanger thing where he doesn't have the flanger on all the time. He's only using it for certain parts of the song, and every time the flanger gets turned on, it is in the same part of its cycle with the modulation sweep. So I would do this two ways. The first thing, I would go to the bypass and I'm going to assign this to a momentary control switch. So let's right click it. Let's go say control switch number 3, and we're going to set the minimum to bypass and the maximum to engaged. Now on my FM3 right here, we can go FC control. As you can see, I've got a dedicated control switch layout. So button number 3 on my FM3 is set as a momentary control switch. So really quickly, let's go to the flanger. When I press button 3 and hold it down, the flanger is going to be on. As soon as I release that, the flanger is going to be off. What I want though is every time I turn it on for the flanger to start at the same point of its cycle. So I can do that using the bypass reset parameter right here. And I really didn't try to dial in the Unchained flanger sound here. I just went with the MXR model and just twisted a few things to where I thought it sounded good. So if I set bypass reset to 270, this is going to do the Van Halen thing. So you'll hear this, I'm just going to chug some low notes, and when I kick this flanger in, it's going to start in the same part of its cycle. This is really, really cool, especially in combination with this control switch. So let's see if I can swap hands and do this. So it's always starting with that particular swoosh sound right there. So if you want to do the unchained thing with a flanger, those 2 steps, momentary control switch and the bypass reset, and then go in and dial in the knobs to where you think it sounds really, really good. You don't just have to play Van Halen songs with this as well. You could use different bypass reset values and really go crazy with the flanger here. Like if we crank the depth up and the feedback, you can get some really, really kind of wild ray gun style effects. Kind of like the old ADA flanger trick that a lot of people did. And there's an ADA model in here as well. So we've got that momentary and bypass reset flanger. Let's talk about another trick, this time with the reverb block. And this has more to do with how you dial in your reverbs, the old Abbey Road Studios reverb trick. If you don't know what I'm talking about, very soon you'll know what I'm on about. So what I want to do, let's select, say, the London Plate reverb. Let's not turn the level all the way up. That's not what I wanted to do. I really like the way this reverb sounds. Let's have a listen to it. You'll notice in the reverb EQ section as well, there's already quite a lot of high cut going on, but the Abbey Road trick is to dial in quite a bit of low cut. I think around 500 to 600 hertz was the old Abbey Road value. So let's maybe go for 600-ish, somewhere around there. What this is going to do is take most of the low end out of the reverb. So the reverb is going to sound a little bit thinner on its own, but the advantage is you can crank up the reverb level without it really muddying up your guitar sound. And again, it's going to leave space in the mix. So let's have a listen to this. Same settings now with the low cut frequency, 583, around 600 hertz. So it's really nice. It's when I'm playing my guitar, I don't have this huge wash of extra low end being introduced by the reverb, but when I stop, I've still got my lovely reverb trails on there. And especially if I was playing a guitar solo and I wanted an always on reverb, this would be nice because I'm going to hear more of the reverb as I play up high. And less of it as I play down low. Pretty awesome. So there is just a really useful trick for reverb. It works well for delays as well. And one last little trick, because we've been talking about kind of high gain sounds this entire video, use the amp block input EQ to control the amount of, say, mud, or to dial out mud in your preset. So with the CCV, this is already a pretty awesome sounding amp. If I crank up the input drive though, it starts to get a little bit kind of gooey in the low end. And an easy way to clean all of that up is to go to the input EQ and just raise the low cut control. I'd start around 150 hertz. Alternatively, you can use the ideal page cut switch. This is the same as setting the input EQ low cut at 120 hertz, I think. I normally like a bit more. So let's have a listen to the low notes now. You can really distinctly hear the difference there when I had the low cut at its minimum versus cranking it up over 400 hertz. Now, there is no magic low cut frequency. Dial this one using your ears. I find for stuff like the CCV, the Friedman models, and the Rectos, over 400 or 500 hertz with the low cut is going to be really effective. Other amp models and different guitars are going to result in different input EQ values. So there's a couple of handy little tricks. If you want to get a gain boost or a lead boost, you want a funky old school octave, you want clearer reverbs, you want a tighter low end, you want a really responsive and organic sounding gate, and you want that EVH flanger sound. This is how I would go about doing these things. But there are so many more tricks and so many awesome effects we can dial in with the FM3 or the Axe FX3. Why don't you let us know what some of your favorites are in the comments? As always, sharing is caring. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I'll see you all next time. Take it easy.